Good morning, Arthur Rafferty, ASNI TV. I had a meeting with an MLA at Stormont last week. I was invited to go for something to eat after our meeting. We got a lovely meal with all the trimmings. Now, I wanted to pay for my share of the meal, but was told that the food was all subsidised. And when he told me that the public purse pays £300,000 a year for the food for all the MLAs, I was gobsmacked. Then he went on to tell me that the MLAs bring their families for cheap food. Some even travel in from the country. Some MLAs arrange their meetings at Stormont so that they can avail themselves of the cheap food. For the friends, he laughed when he told me that some MLAs who live very near to Stormont arrange to meet their friends, even some constitutional members, in for a meal. This has been going on for years. I know some who have had family birthday parties at Stormont with at least 50 people attending, all paid for by the public purse. It is all a total scandal. This is people who earn nearly £50,000 a year, who also claim for travelling expenses. Office staff, members of their families work for them, claims for special advisors, all paid for by the public purse. Surely now members of the public can see what is going on in Stormont. It is a total rip-off. And the quicker you get rid of that scum, the better we will be. I left Stormont that day very angry. I thanked my MLA friend for being so honest with me. I left with a terrible bad taste in my mouth after all he had told me. When you think of how poor people are struggling with large families to make ends meet and to pay their bills, then you get that parcel of crap sitting at Stormont feeding their fat, corrupt, ugly faces. It makes me sick. And getting to our bins, then you get those in the city council who are planning to cut the size of our bins. Now, large families at the minute have to squeeze the rubbish into their bins as they are. So by making bins smaller, they will have to use black bags to put the excess rubbish in and put the bags on top of the bin. And if the bin lorries don't take the black bags, use your imagination, then the black bags will end up dumped in some entry. Anyway, the city council and the councillors are treated, if they are treated like those crap at Stormont, with cheap subsidised food, well, their bins will be always empty, as they, like the MLAs at Stormont, will be eating out all the time, cheap food paid by the public purse. Now, the hypocrisy of these people beggars belief. A lot of these MLAs and councillors are supposed to be Christian people, men and women. They want to have a good long look at themselves in the mirror. And getting back to Ruth Patterson. Ruth Patterson appeared in court on the 22nd of August. I don't think Ruth should have had to appear in court for speaking her mind. Whatever happened to freedom of speech? It would have been better if Ruth had appeared in court on her own, instead of having that random mob of so-called politicians with her, who are supposed to be uphold law and order. These people would go to any length to get themselves on television. Nolan speaking to Terry Spence, crying again for 1,000 more police, saying his police are hard pressed and are burnt out, doing double shifts. At the G8 scam, these police got £80 million spent on them. All I seen the police doing was lying in the sun, getting sunburned. Maybe that is what Terry Spence was thinking about when he said his police were burned out. I listened to Brian Rowan speaking. I never heard so much crap, but what else can you expect from him? He works for the BBC. I thought the postman spoke up well against the police, saying, if they cannot do the job, then pack it in. That didn't go down too well with Nolan on the BBC, so they pulled the plug on him. Typical Nolan and typical BBC. But he didn't pull the plug on the mother of a policeman who was saying her son comes home exhausted after his shift, but never mentioned about his pay packet with plenty of overtime. I was up covering the Woodvale protests for ASNI TV. All I saw was police sitting in their jeeps, eating hamburgers, chips, coke and smoking for hours on end doing nothing. How can these police go home tired and burnt out, according to Terry Spence? Then you get our chief constable on TV saying, I want. I think he is spending too much time with his chums in Sinn Féin ARA. Their favourite saying is, we want. Simple solution would be to ban all marches. But that would not suit Matt. Then he would get no overtime. Sunday sequence on the 25th of August. I listened to Ollie Kane, John from Foyle and Jude Collins speaking about relaying the news and how our papers report our news. The papers that Jude Collins writes for, the Andytown News, refuse to take my story about who murdered my father in 1974. I mentioned who murdered him, but because it was Sinn Féin ARA members, they refused to print my story. Also, the Irish News in Donegal Street, they refused to accept my father's anniversary insertion on his 39 years dead, because I mentioned who murdered my father. Also, Sinn Féin ARA. Also, UTV and BBC have also refused to air my story. So much for freedom of the press and media. They only print and show what they are told to. Ollie Kane was the only man there who spoke up about the corrupt antics of the so-called media. But I now have my own channel on UTV, so I don't need the corrupt UTV or BBC or those corrupt newspapers, because I can tell my own stories, and they are all uncut, not like the UTV or BBC, who are told what stories to tell by their corrupt, overpaid, spineless masters. A bulletin that's just come in. Kieran Doherty, a known real ARA terrorist who was murdered by his own gang for selling dope, has received a substantial amount of money from the public purse as compensation. How dare they give this scum money? My father, who was murdered by a 5-man gang of Sinn Féin ARA, all who were informers paid by the RUC Special Branch and the British government. My father got no compensation at all. The scum who paid Doherty said he wasn't entitled to it. But all I got for him was £310 to help to bury him. Yet this piece of scum, Kieran Doherty, gets a large sum of money because he is a terrorist and a drug dealer. Will someone tell me where is the justice in that? My father was no terrorist at all. He was only a hard-working docker at the Belfast docks. Now, getting back to last week, Princess Diana. I see we are still waiting on Whitehall and Scotland Yard to disclose what new evidence they have about the murder of Diana. I suppose they will have to run it past the palace first to see if they can disclose its contents. Looks like another cover-up is on the books. Syria. You would think that Britain should have learnt a lesson when Blair and Bush invaded and bombed an innocent country like Iraq and Libya and killed hundreds of thousands of innocent men, women and children who are still dying to this present day in an illegal war. Now you have Cameron and Haig doing the exact same thing in Serbia. Who gives them warmongers the right to invade a neutral country and to arm terrorists to wage war in that country? I think it's time countries like Russia and China told America, England, France and Germany where to go. Anyone who has a story to tell and wishes me to air it can call me on my mobile 07715 921137, or I can send a reporter out to get your story. And remember, I will tell your story as you tell me. Nothing will be cut out. Watch my stories on YouTube, arthurrafferty.com, ASNI www.asbestosupportni.co.uk, YouTube Arthur Rafferty, and Arthur Rafferty Docker. Thank you for watching ASNI TV. I'll see you soon.